Hello, Steve Dalachinsky. You're going to be performing during the Black Lives Matter pop-up series on Sunday, January.
25.
Thank you. So I was wanting to hear you speak a little bit about your work and how you see your work as in terms of the world, how you what you're trying to what your work is expressing for you, or how it expresses, or what is your idea about your own work?
Yeah, sometimes it's very difficult to speak about one's work without forgetting that part of the conversation is ego-driven, although some people try not to relate to their egos. But the work itself is, at its best, what I hope is transformative. I've always talked about the idea that rather than just describing what's happening, be it a social, political situation or just a tree, that you should be able to have a transformative quality in the work. What I discovered is like improvisation, that can be either very spontaneous or very difficult depending how much actual thinking you're doing. Because if you do too much thinking, it's going to ruin the object of the creation. So what I've learned from my own work and listening to other people's work and to music in particular, it's I like to think about it now as a kind of transformative description or descriptive transformation, which is sort of a cop-out, but also includes the both elements, because it's not that easy to be purely improvisational and purely transformative. And I think one of the keys in my work, which I've almost kind of thought I was avoiding, but then when I read a lot of it, realize it's continually present, is social and political conditions that happen in the world, and particularly in America. And even in the collage I do, it's very social and racial conscious. And I even when I write a poem that's more experimental, meaning where I play with language a lot, I can't get away from the whole socio-political structure of what happens in the world, and particularly in the country I was born and grew up in. So I would say the work is basically based in my experience, and almost what I was going to half-jokingly say about my feeling of being interviewed today as both an experimental and experiential idea or ideal.
So, so could you talk a little more? Talk about you've talked about improvisation. You've talked about social political, but can you bring the idea of words, improvisation, and the music that you've aligned yourself with together for a moment?
Yeah, I think the most important thing of how the connection works and how I was doing my own work, particularly mostly through the 80s and 90s, where I was sitting in an audience writing a poem while the music was happening, is how all of these qualities should be, and when they work at their best, are integrated, and how one form of art affects the other form of art, and which is this also true of how one aspect of what's happening in the world that has nothing to do with art affects your art. And I see the music that I've been most involved in, which I don't even know, don't even like to put labels on it anymore, but we can call it free jazz or whatever we want to call it, has its basic foundation in a socio-political system and the idea of freedom and improvisation, which to me is two of the very key elements of my work, whether the poem sounds linear or completely abstract. It basically comes from a place of free, well, let's just call it freedom. I try as little as possible to let my my overthinking get in the way. I want it to be as free as possible when I write it.
All right, so you're performing on Sunday as well as Yuko Otomo, and I hear that Joe McPhee is joining you. Do you have any closing words on this and Black Lives Matter? And
I feel that well, Joe and I have done stuff, but not for a long time, and I'm very happy that he's going to be part of my part of the evening. And yeah, it'll be a very between Joe and myself. I offered to show him the work. He said, "Don't worry about it." So it'll be a very free, whatever, 30-odd minutes of freedom, and in accordance to what another word I don't like to use, the theme of the festival, which is Black Lives Matters, and a dedication to Roy Campbell, who was my birthday brother and who I love dearly, and Amiri Baraka, who was a friend and a great inspiration to me in my work. I personally will read work that deals with the idea of not just Black life, but all life matters, and how one of the pieces I'm going to read is about that idea of basically being forced, in some cases out of necessity, to give up some of your rights. In other words, being asked many questions about who you are and what you do and basically where you're going, which I think is way overstated by the authorities that be. And I'm also going to read pieces for Roy and for Amiri, and I wanted to be the work to be a celebration of what's happening, but also for people to think about it.
thank you, Steve.